Hi all, my name is Jonathan Mamaril, and today we're here on the HR Engage podcast. Another episode, but a fantastic guest today. We've got Dave Madeley. Dave, how you going?
I'm going well, Jonathan, and thanks for having me on today.
Dave, I'm super excited about all of this. I always am. But Dave, you've got some really cool stuff, really interesting background. I'd love to delve into a little bit. And, I could do the whole LinkedIn thing and just regurgitate where you've been and where you come from. But, hey, you're in front of us right now. Just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yep, sure. My name's Dave Madeley. I actually live in Toowoomba in Queensland.
Yep.
And my current role at the moment is that I'm the People and Culture Coordinator at the Southern Downs Council. So I'm actually based in Warwick. And I've worked in HR for approximately 18 years. Prior to that, I did spend about a dozen years in the police force in South Australia. And then I moved across into the logistics field before coming to live in Queensland. And my role here at the council is basically I'm a coordinator, which is a supervisory role. I've got 5 direct staff. The advisors, the senior advisors, they report through to me, and I report through to the manager of people and safety. And I've been here for almost 2 years now.
Dave, you've got that really interesting background because you come from a police background and then logistics. And then, you've done a few other things, but then you eventually went into HR. So tell us, what was the thinking behind, being the police and then going, okay, I need to do something different?
Yep, sure. I joined the police at a relatively young age. I was only a couple of years out of school. And like a lot of people at that age, I was a little bit of a loose end, I guess. I didn't really know exactly what I wanted to do with my life. And there was something about the police force that was appealing to me. I thought that it would be a different type of job. I didn't see myself sitting behind a desk or doing anything like that. So I was trained at the Falklands Police Academy, just outside of Adelaide, where I spent 2 years of live in and live out, and then about 10 years on the road, both in Adelaide and south of Adelaide, and also Whyalla. So you grow up fairly quickly once you hit the streets as a police officer of a young age. But what I discovered after about 10 years or 12 years in the police department, I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It is a very special career. I never regret joining the police, but I knew that I didn't want to do it for the rest of my days. So basically, I joined a company called IPEC Transport, which were owned by the main Nicholas Group back then, and I moved up to North Queensland, and I moved around several logistics companies with the Toll Group and also main Nicholas. And eventually I landed up working at TNT, and I moved down here to Toowoomba, and I was the branch manager for TNT. But then I got hit by the travel bug, something fierce. I did a few overseas holiday, and I thought that I would really like to spend a lot of time overseas. So lo and behold, I applied for a job in Dubai. And I actually got the job, and I was flown to Dubai while they made the final decision. I spent 4 days on the ground there and returned to Australia, and then offered the job as a logistics manager working for UPS, which is United Parcel Service, which is one of the world's largest courier and logistics company.
Massive.
And so I actually went over there. Massive. Yeah. I actually went over there sort of basically running their trucking division out of Dubai, with all the trucks that run into Saudi Arabia, to Oman, to Kuwait, to Qatar, and all those other Middle Eastern countries. And I thought that I'd found my future after the police force of being in logistics, but that wasn't the case.
Well, okay, so, we're talking, I don't know, maybe millions in dollars of assets, and the scheduling would have been crazy. I'm not a logistics person, but even just listening to that, Dave, I'm thinking, wow, there's a lot of things going on. So now I'm going to ask you this next question. You've gone from policing to logistics, thinking, okay, this is the life of Dubai. So why go to HR? What happened there?
Yeah, that's it was really interesting because I didn't find HR. HR found me. The manager, yeah, it's true. The manager of UPS in Dubai at that stage was a guy named John Tansey, and John was a New Zealander who I got on very well with. And the HR manager had a personal reason that he had to return back to his home country in Europe, and he left fairly quickly. Only gave a week or two's notice. Now, John Tansey noticed something in me, and basically he said, would I be interested in actually running the HR department? I had no formal qualifications in HR. I'd never thought of being a HR person at all. It had never been on my radar. But John gave me 48 hours to think about it, and lo and behold, I spoke to my wife about it. She was over there with me in Dubai, and we thought, well, why not? Why not try something different? And they also agreed to pay for me to get formal qualifications, and I went to the university over there as well too, in the Dubai campus. So it all worked out for me very, very well. So literally, you think your life's set in a certain path, and then lo and behold, it takes a real change, one that you're not expecting, but a very welcome change, I must say.
So this journey into HR is a very different one from your perspective, and as you said, HR found you, not the other way around. I suppose the question then is, why are you so passionate about human resource, and why do you enjoy it?
Yeah, it's interesting, going from an operational background in an operational role in logistics and then moving into HR, that gave me some sort of credibility with the other managers, because when they were talking to me about what they wanted to achieve as operational managers, I was perfectly tuned with them. And I think that was a real advantage for me. It's not as though I studied HR at a young age and moved into HR. By this stage, I'd done many years of operational leadership, so I actually really understood what the issues were with the business and how I could help. And what's made me passionate about HR is that I can see the difference that good HR makes. If you support the managers, work for the goals of the business, I believe that HR can add a real benefit to organisations that do it properly. I mean, too many companies to me say people are our greatest assets, but then they don't treat them as such. They walk the walk, they talk the talk, but at the end of the day, they're not really doing it. A company that does treat their people with the respect they deserve and nurture them and develop them, I think that's where HR can really, really make a big difference in today's sort of business environment.
You talk about, you believe that HR can definitely make a difference in the workplace, and that's why you've really done that. I want to take a step backwards a little bit with your journey. And I think a lot of people would be very interested to hear your thoughts on this. There's a number of people, as you probably know, in HR who have come from overseas and then come back to Australia. And there's many as well that are in Australia right now looking at overseas opportunities. Could I ask, what was the reasons for you returning home? And, would you have wanted to stay longer if possible? And what would you say to people who do want to go overseas and try their hand?
Yeah, sure. Now, when I first got the offer for my wife and I to go and live in Dubai, I will admit I was fairly anxious about the move, and they offered me a 2-year contract at that stage. So I thought, oh well, it'll be a good experience. I'll go over there for 2 years and then I'll come back. Well, 2 years turned into 3 years, turned into 4 years, turned into 5 years, and my wife and I very much enjoyed it. Australia was at that stage was going through the GFC, the financial crisis, and we felt that both stability and financially we were better off staying in Dubai. And, of course, by this stage, we had a very, very good social life, a good group of friends from all around the world. We were able to do trips away to Cairo, as an example. Went there for a week. We went to Gallipoli. We went to Cyprus. It was really suited us down to the ground as far as sort of achieving all the travel that we wanted to do. Instead of coming back to Australia on my vacation, we flew to the States 3 times. We flew to all sorts of different places as well. The opportunities that we wouldn't have got had we just stayed in Dubai. Had we just stayed in Australia. What I would say to somebody that does get bitten by the travel bug is to do it. Because I don't think you'll regret it if you do it in a calculated manner with a company that you think will look after you. I think it's very, very exciting if you find yourself in that position. Maybe it's not for everybody, but if you do get the travel bug, I would certainly recommend it. It was interesting because when you're living over there amongst hundreds of different nationalities, you become almost like an ambassador for your country. Well, and people ask you about Australia, and it's almost like you're a representative of Australia. And
Yeah.
as a general rule, we're held in very, very good regard overseas as Australians. People tend to like us. Obviously, there's some cultural and language difficulties at times, but that's all part of the fun of living and working overseas. So it was a really interesting time. We came back for personal reasons. We did have a death in the family, unfortunately. My wife's father passed away, and there was a need for us to return. But I left there on very good terms. I gave 3 months' notice. They threw me a terrific sort of farewell and beautiful gifts that I still cherish today in my home office. Yeah, thoroughly recommend it. Had a great time. If it hadn't been for that passing, yes, I think we would have stayed there. Potentially another 5 years. But that wasn't to be, and we don't regret coming back either.
Okay. I suppose the other question I wanted to ask on your journey is that you found yourself in local council, which obviously is a bit of a change from some of the, private businesses that you've worked in, or even consultancies that you worked in.
Yeah.
What's been, I suppose, the biggest challenge for you working in that sort of local government framework or environment?
Yeah, this is the first time that I've worked in local government, and probably one of the challenges, or from a HR perspective, that I have found different to private industry is probably the layers of decision making and the policies and procedures around procurement, because you're not dealing with private funds, you're dealing with public funds. Obviously, we're a publicly funded organisation. People, quite rightly, believe they have the right to criticise councils and state governments because they are contributing to your revenue streams. And I find that probably one of the most challenging. But I'm lucky enough here that I've had some very, very good close colleagues that have been able to guide me through that sort of maze of difference when you compare sort of a public entity like this as compared to a private entity. There's pros and cons for both.
Now I can't see anyone that's actually listening who listen to this podcast, but I suspect there's quite a few people nodding their heads as you said those few lines. If I could just time travel a little bit with you and go back to the early career, Dave, Wishy Tales and all that type of stuff. What advice would you have for the early career Dave? What advice would you have for them?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's one that I have thought about in the past. Now, there's probably one of the things that I would say, and this comes on with the benefit of experience, is don't stay in a job that you don't like, or don't stay in a job where the organisation doesn't appreciate you. I believe that takes its toll on your own mental health and your own well-being as well. If you go to work and you don't enjoy it, my advice would be basically find something else to do, because life is incredibly short, and before you know it, you really have to consider what you're doing work-wise, because you spend so long there. You spend 8 to 10 hours a day in working life. If you don't enjoy it, I would say move on, find something else, because you won't suddenly start enjoying it.
It's really hard, I suppose, with anyone in any early career, but in particular in human resources. If you're at a job or even an area of HR that you deeply don't like or dislike, to stay there for, maybe because it looks good in your CV or those types of things is, I think from your perspective, you're saying, look, you're just wasting your time. Don't do it, because it's going to have some type of effect on you, whether it's going to be personal, which is usually what happens. There's be some well-being factor, but also it could close you off to different opportunities going forward as well, right?
Yeah, that's very true. And HR is multifaceted. And what I mean by that is that HR has what I call the very positive things. It has like recruitment and selection. It has it has development and capability achievements, but it also has a slightly darker side, and that's the industrial relations, the employee relations. Now, if you land up doing employee relations and industrial relations 100% of the time, it can take its toll on you. And what I found in another role, I used to put myself asked to go onto recruitment and selection panels as well too. So I not all day was dealing with the 3 to 5% of people that might not be performing properly. So you have to do the positive things as well to have that nice balance and be able to keep yourself in tune with how you're actually feeling. Because if you deal with too much negativity, it can rub off on you, unfortunately. So you need to be very, very mindful of that too.
HR attracts a lot of negativity in every facet, whether it's operational, from people, from courts, commissions. I mean, it's just everywhere, right?
Yeah.
I suppose but the question I'm getting to you is, and I think you've given some advice here already or some guidance to many people listening. But what are the sort of two big pieces of advice you would have for any person in HR or is currently in human resources?
Yeah, one of the things that I noticed when I first went into HR, I joined a number of different forums. I wanted to network amongst different HR people. Now, what I was very surprised to encounter was a belief by some HR people that they actually run the business, that HR drives the business, that HR controls the business, and you must do what HR says. In my opinion, nothing could be further from the truth. Now, just to expand on that a little bit further, if you are a HR professional and you're working in a manufacturing company, the revenue streams of that company are brought in from the manufacturing. They're not brought in from what HR actually leads that business to. To me, HR is a support function. It supports the business. HR has to be very much in tune with what the business wants to achieve. What are the outcomes the business is actually looking for? What do the individual, directors or managers want to achieve within their area? And you sit down and you work with them and you help them achieve those things. But at no time do I ever believe that HR should drive the business as such or be the lead in that, because HR by itself doesn't create revenue. The business never started out, because they wanted HR to drive it. They started out manufacturing something or selling something, whatever that might be, and that's the core function of the business. So I would tell HR professionals that their function is to support and assist and mentor the business to achieve the goals that the business has set out to achieve. To me, that's fundamental to good HR, and I think that's partially why HR has had a bad rap in the past, because HR people sometimes put themselves in these positions of power, and they shouldn't be. They shouldn't be. That's not the function. That's not the function of HR at all. So that's one of the beliefs that I sort of make my HR decisions surrounding, to try and understand what the business wants to achieve and be there to support the business, whether it be within council or private industry. The other sort of philosophy, if you like, that I've actually got is, over the years, holding various different positions, some quite senior management, down to being a business partner, I've seen what I call over-analysis. And there's a saying that I also live by, and it's called over-analysis can cause paralysis. And I seriously believe that. Some of the businesses I've worked in, yes, you need to analyse. Yes, you have to make informed decisions. Anything less would be stupidity. But I find companies that overanalyse, look for every specific risk and try to negate every specific risk, are not the companies that I've worked with that have been the biggest achievers. I believe you can't mitigate all the risks, so you do your best, but at the end of the day, don't get paralysed by your over-analysis on whatever that issue may actually be. So that's the philosophy that I was sort of that I use in human resources.
Not to overanalyze. It must be so difficult in HR, because there are so many inherent risks. I mean, you just have to look at employment law as an example. I know that's just the easiest one, but look at employment law as an example. There's just so many inherent risks for people in human resources. From your perspective, is there something that you do or that you mentor your team around not overanalyzing? And where's that line? What's enough? Like, do you have like a guide for yourself and your team?
Yeah, I actually do. When it comes to decision making in human resources, and I've been to a few commissions over the years, the Fair Work Commission and the Queensland Industrial Relations Commission, and I find that one of the commissioners definitely what they always tend to look for is, are your policies and procedures reasonable, and have you followed them? So basically, if we are on a situation of conflict potentially with a staff member, I think it is extremely important to follow your procedures, and you get to a point where you realistically can't do anything more than what you've already done. Well, that's the point. You've done what you can, and also take a what I call a helicopter view. In other words, if you're making decisions, ask yourself, now, if I have to defend this decision in 6 months' time, do I think it will be a reasonable decision, and do I think I'll get support from that Fair Work Commission or whoever it might be? If the answer is no, well, then it's probably the wrong decision. If the answer is yes, it sounds reasonable, and you can even, discuss that with other HR professionals that you know, well, then you're probably on the right path and you're probably going to be okay, because there are no decisions without a degree of risk. So you can only do what you can do. But if you look to just completely analyse every single decision, well, you're really being hamstrung by your own sort of pedanticness, I think, is how I would actually view it.
I mean, that's really good thinking. And I want to also go to the challenges, because there's so many challenges now in HR, in any industry, but human resource particular. In your view, Dave, what's the biggest challenge you're facing now in human resources, and how are you tackling it?
In my particular role here at the council, if I look at the demographics of the workers that work here at council over the next 5 to 6 years, we will have somewhere between 30 to 35% of our workforce will be retiring. And because we do have an aging population that works here at council, and that's from all levels. That's right from the CEO and directors right down to the work crews. It is an aging workforce, and I believe there's a lot of businesses that could well be in that situation, especially councils and construction companies. At the same time, when we analysed the new applications that were actually coming in, we weren't attracting a lot of young people into the organisation. I mean, people in their 20s and their 30s or school leavers.
Yep.
And we have made a concerted effort here at council to actually attract those people to council. Because one thing about working in a council is we do everything from administration to road crews. We run animal shelters, local laws departments. There's a myriad of occupations that you can do within council: administration, human resources, customer service, front counter, and the list just goes on and on. There are very few businesses that actually offer the diversity that council actually offers, but we don't sell that to people very, very well. So that's the path that we've been on in the HR department, as we've got together with our marketing and communications department. And over the last 12 months, there's probably about 5 or 6 initiatives that we've introduced here, which we're just starting to see the results come in. And we are attracting more younger people into the organisation. Now, then, of course, we've got to actually look at what are the retention strategies that we're actually using on the younger people as well, too, because things are different to when I first joined the workforce. Younger people are looking for different things. They're looking for flexibility. This 9 to 5 routine doesn't really grab a lot of them. They're looking for time off when they need it. So employers have to be more flexible than what they ever previously were, and they have to understand that things aren't the same as they've always been, and you have to evolve. You have to change with the times, which is exactly the path that we've gone on here at council, and I believe it's a success.
That's really interesting that you've identified that attracting younger workers as a significant challenge, and I suspect that's probably going to be, definitely in councils, that's a huge challenge, and I suspect you're right as well with construction and some other areas as well, having the same type of problem. So that specific thought process or mindset to actually focus on that seems to be quite different to even say 5 or 10 years ago in terms of the thinking.
And here at the Southern Downs Council, when we got together with the marketing team, we had a couple of videos that we used to attach to our job adverts, like on Seek, and you could put your link in there and that sort of thing. Well, we threw them all out basically, and we recorded about another half a dozen videos, and they're good. They're glossy. We're featuring
Yep.
a lot of our good young people that have joined the organisation. So we're marketing in a different style to how we used to, and it's much more catchy for the younger people than previously what we were actually doing. We also have a employee value proposition too, which is really just literature, 5 or 6 pages that we send to the applicants as well, too, showing them what it's like working for council, answering a lot of those questions that they may have about council, and we sell the benefits of a career with council. The other things that we've started to do is, as HR people, we now attend all the job fairs around the southeast and southwest Queensland as well, too. And we're working with the economic development team and the community development team, and we're going out there and we're getting ourselves in front of high schools. And we're actually saying, this is what you can do. Come and join us, sort of thing. You can have a great life at council. You can do an apprenticeship. You can do a traineeship. And what we're doing too, we changed our own internal policies that with apprentices and trainees, we are retaining the good ones. Whereas previously we gave them no guarantee that they would be kept on after that traineeship. And that was, you spend all this money and time with your trainees and apprentices, and you like them and they like you and they want to stay, but our own internal policies needed reviewing so that we could actually keep them. And that's one thing we worked with the directors and CEO to achieve. And recently 2 of our trainees have transferred across into full-time permanent roles, which has been great. And the same thing's going to happen with our apprentices as well too.
That's fantastic. Now I want to switch gears a little bit because I want to ask you, on the other side, what is the one thing about human resources that people might disagree with you about? Is there something, a little bit more controversial that you say, hey, maybe some people don't disagree with me about this?
Yeah, there is actually, because I find that some people, they view HR, and if they believe they're getting treated wrongly by their manager, they'll come and run to HR and say, this person has been treating me badly, et cetera, et cetera. Well, my belief is that the number one priority for HR is to protect the organisation. It's actually to protect the organisation and to develop the organisation. Now, not everybody would agree with me on that. Now, I think, again, it's multifaceted why HR exists, but I think at the end of the day, you owe an obligation to that company or that organisation, and you're paid by them to protect them, and that is the fundamental number one that you should actually do. And I'm sure some people will be sitting there probably shaking their heads saying, no, I don't agree with you, Dave. But that's one of the...
I think there'll be some, and I think there'll be some that will be doing the opposite as well, all right? So and we don't know because I can't see who's actually watching this. Now, our tradition at HR Engage, on the HR Engage podcast, is I ask you a couple of rapid-fire questions about yourself, and the first thing pops into your mind, okay? So you ready?
Yep.
All right, so first thing is, what is your favourite movie, Dave?
Favourite movie, there's 2.
Okay.
I love the original National Lampoon's Vacation with Chevy Chase. I love that movie. So that's as far as a comedy goes. Every time I'm flicking around the channels and it's on there, I'm gone. I'm there sitting there watching it for the next hour or 2 because I just find Chevy Chase so funny in that movie. And the other one is the Shawshank Redemption.
Ah, Shawshank.
Yeah. It's just one of the best. I remember watching it for the first time, and I was just glued to the screen to know where that movie would go. It's a fantastic tale of overcoming adversity, and the good guys win at the end there. So it's a terrific movie. That, and I think it rates as one of the most popular movies of all time. I can certainly see that. Yeah. So there's those 2. They're both real favourites of mine.
So that's the first time I've ever heard Dave, National Lampoon's and Shawshank Redemption said in the same sentence. So it's a first for everything, right? First for everything. That's the first time I've ever heard that, ever.
Yeah, and I do love movies. I mean, there's a lot of other great movies as well too. I love The Green Mile with Tom Hanks. That's a wonderful movie.
Oh.
I like good dramas, but I also love to have a real good laugh as well, and that's what I do with
good belly laugh. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So you have implied, not implied actually. I think you basically said outright that you do like the traveling. So my question is, what is your favorite holiday destination?
Well, if I was to say in Australia, it's probably the Margaret River region of Western Australia. I just love it. My wife and I have been there twice now. I love Perth. I think
Yep.
it's a fantastic city. In southeast Queensland, I find things are getting a little bit congested these days. But when I go over to Perth, they seem to have much more open, much less population around you. And you drive the highways down to Margaret River, and it's just beautiful, beautiful
Wow.
country. I just really, really like it, and I find it very, very relaxing to go there. And we went there earlier this year again, and I'm looking forward to the next time we go back. Terrific part of the world.
Nice. Must check it out at some point. Now, apart from family and friends, who has inspired you the most, Dave?
If I was to say a sort of like a public figure, and
Yeah.
it may surprise some people to actually hear this one, but Bob Hawke. When I was
Okay.
growing up, and I was in my 20s and then into my 30s, and Bob Hawke was the Prime Minister, and Bob Hawke to me was the pinnacle of what a Prime Minister should be. And just to expand on that, Bob was a larrikin. He was a good bloke. He understood
Very much was.
Australians, and he would, was quite happy to be pictured having a beer. It was before a lot of this political correctness, and he understood Australians. But he was also such a good Prime Minister too, because he led us on a path where the unions respected him, so they worked with him and not against him like they do, maybe in later life. And I always admired the way that even though Bob was like our man on the international scene, he never lost his Australianhood or his sort of larrikinism. And from all accounts, he got on very, very well with the other world leaders too, because to me he was authentic, and he sort of epitomised what I call the traditional Labor values. He did fight for the working man. He fought for the underprivileged, and I thoroughly respected him for what he did as a Prime Minister, and I've tried to take some of those values myself and put them into action.
What is the thing you do outside of work that you're really passionate about or keeps you going?
It's interesting. One of the things that I absolutely love, and I've loved it all my life, is music, and all different types of music, not particularly just one genre. I'm a bit of a hack on the guitar. I was slightly better on the drums, but I still don't mind picking up the guitar and having a bit of a crack. Not that I'm very, very good at it. I certainly wouldn't win any awards on the world stage. And music is a huge part of my life. A day will not go past where I don't listen to some type of music. Because to me, music, it tells a story. It reminds you of certain times in your life. It can take you from a bad mood to a good mood. Music adds atmosphere to parties and weddings, anything. Music to me is an absolute gift for mankind, and I think we'd be worse off without it. And it doesn't even matter what type of music it is. I'm not a huge sort of thrash metal fan or anything like that, but I like 70s and 80s. I like classic rock. I like a lot of country music these days as well. And I'm very, very passionate about it, and I love it.
So, Dave, tell us something about yourself that people don't know about you. That I suppose you've talked about your music and your passion for your music. Oh, by the way, on that, Dave, what type of music do you like listening to?
70s, 80s, classic rock, and country music as well. So I like them.
Oh, brilliant.
Depends what sort of mood I'm into. I've got a lot of favourite bands. Most of them are from the 80s, like Van Halen and Status Quo, and and sort of bands like that. Some of the more recent acts, I love Nickelback.
Yeah.
I'm a headbanger when
Nickelback. Yeah.
Yeah, I really, really like a lot of that sort of music. But at the same time, I grew up on the Seekers and some country music as well too. So very, very wide tastes actually.
Okay. Well, tell us. Tell us something that's surprising. Other than that, is there something else that people don't know about you?
Well, some people, obviously my closest friends, know this about me. But I was a marriage celebrant for quite a number of years. I was a trained marriage celebrant, and I operated out of Toowoomba. And look, I've probably done about 60 or 70 weddings.
What? Wow, that's amazing.
It was sort of like a number of years back. It just so happened that a lot of our friends were getting married, or a lot of them were getting remarried back then. And I went along to the different weddings, and I wasn't very impressed with the celebrants.
Okay.
And I thought I could do that. And so anyway, I got myself qualified, did a certificate for, and went through all the accreditations and that, because it is a position through the federal government. And lo and
Yep.
behold, there was about 60 or 70 weddings. The only reason I gave it up was really because of the time factor, because it's
Yep.
not just the wedding itself. Is that if you're working full time, you get together with the
Yeah.
couples. You have to do that after hours, so you're doing that into the evening. Then on the Saturday, you may do 2 weddings. You may even do one on the Sunday. Sometimes you get requests for a midweek wedding as well too, and you can get a little bit burnt out. I mean, it's good, the additional money, and it has great tax benefits, but you can still get very, very tired. And that was the only reason that I actually gave it up. But I enjoyed it. I did a lot of great country weddings and all sorts of different things. The brides rolling up on utes with their blue heeler dogs and the whole bit. It was pretty good. And you get invited to the after party too, if you want to stay. Most of the time,
If you want to stay.
But if you get on well with the couple, you quite often ask you to stick around if you want to. So it was enjoyable, and you get paid for it as well too. So
How good. Now, a couple of closing questions.
Sure.
Dave, if you could recommend a book, movie, TV show, or podcast for listeners, what would it be and why?
Yeah, sure. I recently read a book called The Wolf You Feed. Now, The Wolf You Feed was actually written by Wayne Bennett, who we all know as the famous sort of NRL footy coach, the most successful coach in NRL history. And what struck me about that book is firstly, Wayne Bennett is now 74 and he's still going strong.
Yeah.
He's still coaching the Dolphins, and he's had a reasonable year with them. Now, Wayne Bennett wasn't born into a particularly rich family. He was born in Allara, and to be honest, he had a little bit of a tough upbringing too, because his father wasn't home, and his father had an alcohol problem, etc., etc. But Wayne is an absolute achiever. Now, he also went to the police academy and graduated as a police officer, and he wasn't even a particularly good footballer, but he's stuck it out. He's had issue after issue sort of hit him, if you like, and he's just kept on going, and he's such an achiever, and basically he's a household name here in Queensland, and I really admired how he overcame things. And the book was a very interesting read, and through a friend of a friend, I actually got him to sign the book too, which was a bit of a...
Oh, great.
Oh, yeah, it was good. And I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend that. It's called The Wolf You Feed by Wayne Bennett. And
Wolf You Feed.
Very much enjoyed it. Yep.
And lastly, before we let you go, now you've already said overanalyzes paralyzes, and that's a great quote. But is there another quote or a moment inspiration that you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, I think it's because of my love for music. And back in the 90s, there was a singer, and her name is Trisha Yearwood. She's actually married to Gareth Brooks. Now, she wrote a song, and it's called The Song Remembers When. And when you read the words of that song, what it actually talks about is basically you could be driving along in your car and you're just listening to normal commercial radio, and then an old song comes on, and before you know it, your mind is transported back to a certain point in time. Or maybe it's a girlfriend or boyfriend you had at the time, or maybe it's a particular set of circumstances, and you haven't thought about that for potentially years and years, but the song takes you back there. And it's such a wonderful song, and it's called The Song Remembers When, and Trisha actually wrote it, and I've always liked it for that reason, in that music is one of those things you associate with a certain period in your time, in your life, basically, and different music at different times. So it always has a lot of meaning to me when I hear something that takes me back to a certain part of my life.
Yeah, Trisha Yearwood, fantastic singer. Obviously, you had that big hit song in How Do I Live, but you've gone for another song that she's written. So it's a song Remember When? Is that what you said?
Yeah, it's called The Song Remembers When, and it was written in the 1990s by Trisha, and she's also recorded live versions of it as well. And it just means something. I think it's a very, very well written song.
So check it out, everyone, on Spotify or wherever else that you go for your music. A tip from Dave in terms of transporting you to a moment or a time and place in your history. I think you came up with some really good stuff. I mean, that whole overanalyze, paralyzes, and you had some thoughts, especially around that overseas work, and if you have that opportunity and you have that drive, have a go and give it a go. You've also talked about how you see HR being a key support of the organization, but it needs to be very much keyed into what is the purpose and how it makes its revenue, how it's productive, and having HR really slot into that and making itself, I suppose, not only valuable, but also valuable to the asset that's being created, whatever that asset's been created.
Yeah, absolutely. And showing people the value of HR and changing their opinions. If they are negative towards HR, show them what you can do for them. Show them why it's actually important. Why is it important to develop your people? If you don't do that, you're not going to make the most out of your business.
So I'm going to leave that there with Dave, the big music HR guru, who loves Trisha Yearwood as well. I want to leave Dave here. Dave, thank you so much for being on the HR Engage podcast.
Terrific. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I enjoyed it.
To listeners at home that are listening to this, thank you so much for another HR Engage podcast. I'm Jonathan Mamaril. Speak soon.